innate in you, not just because you're the founder, but you're a part of a team. You know the why. And you're trying to fight this thing that the New York Times called moral blindness. We have to have a stronger sense of purpose in what we're doing, not just to make money like on Wall Street. In fact, the good news is that in a study that was reported in 2013 by the Harvard Business Review, over 15 years, those companies that had this sense of purpose, meaningfulness, they call it the firms of endearment, had an over 10 times return on the stock market. So actually, being meaningful is good for business. So as we talk about this, I'm going to look at some more human ideas, some more human initiatives that I think are extremely exciting. So the first is Yili Maitian. Yili Maitian. So this is like the Danone of China, if you don't know it. They sell healthy food and yogurts and the like. And what they've done is they've created a system where, you're on a bus, you're commuting to work like this, and you just hold on to the handle there, and they have connected these handles so that as you're standing there, they also figure out your heartbeat, whether you've got a good sense of balance when it comes over, and a few other items, so that if they see any anomalies, they send you a little alert to your phone via NFC, and if there are any solutions that they happen to sell, they'll also provide you that. Yili Maitian. So how many of you guys have kids? All right, keep your hands up. How many of you guys are loving the way your kids are texting and using social media? Okay, a few less. You sir, are one out of a crowd. So I have a couple of kids, and I know that there's some issues about the kinds of things, texting, sexting, and such. So Oiti out of Switzerland, what they've got is an application. You work it with your child, and anytime the child decides to post something with a little bit too much skin, the app, through the chat, will identify, hey, Alexandra, that looks like a little bit too much, naughtiness, or it's a word that I don't recommend you use, and if you use it again, I'm going to come back. And when I come back, I'm going to be a little bit stronger in my wording. And by the way, if you do it a third time, I'm going to tell Papa. Papa not happy. Oiti. So this was a little bit stronger. This is the Pavlok wristband from the UK. So here it is. Anyone? You guys do New Year's resolutions? Anyone? You good on those? No, or nobody's good on them. A lot of people do them, but this is, for January 3rd, we've already sort of lost the plot. So what you do is you tell your little wristband, hey, listen, these are the things I want to stop. These are bad habits that I don't need to have anymore. And you identify these habits, and you also identify the pain level you'd like to go for. And so as you're going along, let's say for sake of argument, obviously not you, but like at 3 o'clock in the morning, feeling a little bit hungry, roll downstairs, and you go to the kitchen. It knows you're in the kitchen, and then it knows you're actually in front of a thing called the fridge. There's a sensor on the fridge, and when it sees the fridge door opening, it just gives you a little shock. Between 50 and 255 volts. And it gets stronger as you keep the door open. Pavlok wristband. So this is a little bit more meaningful here. This is iPoly, A-I-P-O-L-Y, from Australia. What they've done is I don't know if you have any friends who are blind, but it's a real travesty for these people to have this issue. And there's another great project I want to mention called Blind Spot. It's a socially connected walking stick that helps blind people not be the victim of someone else seeing them, but they can see other people through the socially connected walking stick. iPoly allows you to see what's happening. So if I take a photograph of you, then it will identify what's in the photograph and tell me what's there. And they're now working on contextualizing and saying what's happening between the objects that I identified in your photograph. So bringing vision to blind people, iPoly. So the first was meaningfulness, and the second is responsibility. And we have tremendous need for great responsibility. There are 4 different areas that we need to be applying our sense of responsibility. The first one is the most important in our view, and that is ethics. We have enough issues and headlines that it's bad for business to be unethical. And yet people continue to do it. But we think that it's important that we have our own self-responsibility with regard to our ethics. The second one is continuous learning. We need to have responsibility ourselves for continuous learning. So many companies rely on their learning for development department. But there is nobody in the world who knows better what you need than you yourself. And there's so much information out there, we need to take responsibility, grab the bull by the horns, and learn. Third is personal branding. can't delegate this. I love agencies, but you can't delegate your personal branding to an agency. It's about who you are, your personality. And the final one, a little bit more scary, and this is in the area of cybersecurity. Companies tend to say, well, we'll just put up a firewall. We'll get in the security system. This is not how you're going to protect yourself. The weakest link to your business is you. So you need to take personal responsibility for the way you protect yourself. And you've got to watch out for that little USB key that your son says, hey, Pa, would you mind printing out, this is my new school report? And you say, sure, son. And you take it to work, and then the worm is in. But we're talking about ethics, and in biology this is an important part of the science, and understanding our world around us. And it used to be that when we looked at biology, we kind of, in the procreation, we have a male and a female that makes this new baby, and each of these babies have on average 17 anomalies that the male and the female have put together, have created 17 anomalies. And some of these are good, and some of these are neutral, and some of these are not so good. And Darwin called this the selection, the natural selection, process of natural selection. And we've sort of been living that. But now we have so many great new techniques that are allowing us to explore, analyze, and understand, sometimes master what's going on in biology. We have CRISPR that's now looking for being able to read our genetic code for under $100. And now we're in this moment where we're able to actually elaborate our strength in our biology to be able to put our will onto what we want to create out of the gene. So we're talking ethics, and we have the opportunity, though, to be inspired by the power of nature. So here are a few projects that I've identified as mimicking nature. And the first one is from the United States. And so, dogs have this great snout, right? We don't know how to do that, but what they've done is they recreated the snout of the dog through 3D printing. And it actually, by mimicking the shape and the behavior of the snout, it improves dramatically the ability of artificial smelling. As such, they're hoping that to create a new troop of dogs that are able to do the kind of work that they do in buildings to look for people, to detect explosives or find drugs in the airport. Then we know we have a problem with bees, right? We're depleting our bee population in the world. There are two great initiatives, one in the States and one in Japan, to use the drone technology to create little bees that can go around and pollinate and do the work that we no longer have the troops for. So that's the robotic bee. And right now they're hoping the next step is going to be to create autonomous robotic bees. So we talked about mimicking, but what about correcting nature? Because nature's not all perfect. So this is out of Pakistan in a co-work with some United States professors. And what they've got is called a cow collar. And you put the connected collar around the cow, and it's able to detect what's going on in terms of some of its important bio materials, the readings. And when there are any issues, they are alerted ahead of time, because until now, cows still can't tell that they have a problem. Speak. That was funny, no? Note to self, bad joke. All right, so you like burgers, I have vegans and vegetarians, but how about this one? I don't know if this is vegetarian. Impossible Burger. What they're doing is they're going to recreate the burger they're going to recreate without having to use cows, burgers. For those of you who like wine, they got a new one in San Francisco. It's called Ava Winery. They're going to do the same thing, but for wine. So you don't even have to grow the wine, store the wine. You just make the wine you want. How cool is that? They're hoping to have the new first bottle in 2017, at the end of this year. Or how about Modern Meadow? It's a $100 billion business, the raw leather business. And so these guys are trying to create vegan leather using DNA, then they reconstruct, and then they are able to weave together and make this new leather. It's a synthetic leather. Humans helping humans through technology. This is out of Germany. We have such an issue in Europe, especially on the mainland, with refugees. And so these guys have recognized, these two individuals in Germany have identified the issue that a lot of these refugees don't have access to higher education. In fact, only 1% of them do. So they've created an online platform that allows for 1,500 refugees to get education. So this is technology being used for good purpose. And in Sweden, the BIT nation, refugee emergency response. This is using the blockchain and the Bitcoin to help, in the one case, with identity, which they don't necessarily have, and second of all, give them a bank charge card using the Bitcoin. The final chapter is collaboration. And this is really this notion that we need to work together. We need to figure out why we're doing this together, and we need to put our little defensive mechanisms away and start working together. Some great examples, it's like Ford with Lyft. We're seeing Dexmo Robotics in China. This is an exoskeleton that you put on top of your hand, and using virtual reality allows you to mimic, understand, sometimes play games. They're using it in very different ways. And here's it's the combination of technologies that are being used. This is the collaboration that you need. And so they're using it for training, they're using it for video games, they're using it for medicine. If you have an issue with some kind of difficulty with your hand, you're able to retrain it, looking at the virtual reality and understand, thanks to the exoskeleton that's doing the work, to help you regain some muscle mass in your difficult hand. In the same vein, out of Sweden, this is for people who are missing an arm. People who are missing an arm often have this thing called phantom pain. And so you don't even have the arm, but the pain is there, and it's very hard to get away, and you use a lot of drugs. So these guys have developed a system using augmented reality, where they can actually see their arm as if it's working again. And they can rewire their brain, the neural networks in the brain, to get rid of the pain. As such, they dramatically, 50% reduction in pain, and a huge lot less of painkillers needed. This is meaningful collaboration. And the last one, and it's a project that was a few years ago, but I love it because I need to say it, and it's not just because we had a little Lego thing going on this morning. I planned this ahead of time. It's called Eco Creative Prosthetic, and it's out of Denmark. And this guy, Carlos Torres, he was teaching kids, and one of the kids in his class, Dario, was missing an arm, and he had a prosthetic arm. It was made by some very well-meaning adult doctors, but the arm just looked like a bloody prosthetic arm that was made by adults for adults. It happened to be made for this kid. So he said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to change that all around. So using 3D printing, made the prototypes, and he made an arm that was able to be affixed onto the kid's arm, and on top of that, add any type of toy that he wanted. So his arm went from being a prosthetic arm to a toy. But this is the thing, he used to be teased by the kids, how you have that bad arm, you're missing an arm. You know how kids can be so lovely to each other, right? And so this is the cool thing that this professor did. He said, how many of you guys like Lego? A lot of people like Lego, especially the kids. Would you guys all be willing to give one piece of your Lego set to help him have his arm back? So everyone gave one piece of the Lego. Everyone can sacrifice one piece of Lego. And all of a sudden, it became their arm, not his arm. And so he was able to create all the types of toys, whether it was the sword or Freddy the Dragon or like a crane to go pick up stuff. It was the coolest arm in town. So here's the thing. If you have insight and you know how to collaborate, you can make great things happen. That's it. Meaningfulness, responsibility, collaboration. I hope you've enjoyed the process. This is the list if you want to take a photograph of the items that I showed. And I'm very glad to have Paul, who's here, should you be willing. I've got my book, The Future Proof, which I'll be very happy to sign with Caleb, who's here, talking about these things and how we can future-proof our business in the future. And also, just for anyone who's living in London, a quick plug. The Last Ring Home, I'm doing one last screening in London on Wednesday. Should you be wishing, come and see it. I got a couple of professors really talking about meaningfulness. This is the story of my life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Done.
Thank you. Wow. I told you that would be quick, didn't I? That's phenomenal. Should we hear it one more time from Into Dial? Yes. What do we think? Collerton Grammar School. Marks out of 5 so far. How are we doing? 5? Was that a 3? No. Oh. Doing all right. Well, it's almost time for a tea and coffee break. You'll be very happy to hear. But I hope you'll agree that so far, from Lego to our sales funnel, Stephen Scaleup, Minterdal et al. Have got us going. Would that be fair to say? Yeah. The other brilliant thing about Like Minds is everyone who comes. So please let's embrace this opportunity in less than a minute to meet each other. After the break, I've got some of my panelists are going to join me on stage, so they're going to get us thinking. And then before lunch, Dupsy Abiola is here, who actually braved the dragons of Dragon's Den and won, basically. Was a barrister, now an entrepreneur, sharing some of her secrets. And we go and rocking through to right to the end of the day. Mike Goldsmith is here, editorial director. Give us a wave, Mike. of Beano Studios. Dennis the Menace et al. It's Dennis and Nasher now, isn't it? The double act. So all the way through the day. My only housekeeping note before our short break is if you haven't yet signed up for a lunch lesson, please do so. That's at the back of the room. Pick a group, any group. Tea and coffee will be served upstairs, and if we could get the flow up and down as swift as possible, it will be much appreciated. See you in about 15 minutes. Thank you.
You can't walk around with a chip on your shoulder. It'll bring you down. Remember I told you. And if you're doing good, it'll come back to you. Hey y'all, we better get it together. If it's the last thing we do, how can you live without love? Tell me how can you live without love? You say everybody is against you. Now have you wondered why they feel the way that they do? Have you been suffering instead of living? Not good when you're taking more than you're giving. Tell me how can you live without love? Tell me how can you live without love? You ought to know by now you gotta sacrifice. And if you don't know how, your life will pass you by.
Okay, everybody, thank you. Please have your seats, take your seats. Get cracking. Good. Clean canteen, I approve. Good. Okay, welcome back, everybody. You had a good, speedy tea and coffee break. We'll race into our panel session. I'll introduce our panel. I like the fact that Janet Quill's hair is being lightly blown like a Pepsi-Cola advert. I rather enjoy this. She's always been superwoman to me. So let me tell you who they are. Janet Quill, wearer of many hats, including senior advisor. No, I'm enjoying it, Janet. Do you know? It's one of my biggest fans. It's a senior advisor to London and Partners. She runs Silicon Valley, comes to the UK, and she's all-round brilliant. Darren Westlake, known to many of you as a regional entrepreneur. He is the co-founder of Crowdcube, one of the world's leading equity-based crowdfunding platforms. Nice to see you again, Darren. Now, Julie Hawker is the co-founder and co-CEO of Cosmic, which not only is a brilliant digital agency, it's also a social enterprise, and it's up for, I think, Social Enterprise of the Year this year. Congratulations, Julie. Onwards. Now, Aji, who I've actually just met relatively recently, but it's a pleasure to meet you. Aji Isaac runs a 750-person company. Let me get the name absolutely right. IndusNet Tech Shoe. Is that right? That's right. And that's a digital agency with teams all over the world. Aji Isaac, you're very welcome to the platform. Rachel Howarth, known to us all already from Momentum Southwest, sales guru, I want to say. That's overused, but you were brilliant this morning, so thank you, Rachel Howarth. Let's give them all a round of applause. There you go. Not got a massive amount of time for this panel. We've got a good half hour, though, so let's get into it. I'm going to go out to you as our audience after not too long for your questions, but I set the scene. When it comes to startup to scale up, I'll sit down. 4 particular areas always come to my mind. I feel like a little dwarf. Hello. 4 areas come to my mind. Talent, retaining it, getting it in the first place. Cash, raising investment. Going global, so taking our businesses outside of the UK. And finally, this sort of slightly nebulous thought around brand. How's it created? How does it translate? How's it maintained? So super quickly, I'd like you each to pick on one of those, and it doesn't matter if you both pick the same one because you'll come at it from different angles, but pick on one of those and just give us a certain sense of where you're coming from, tips, things you wish you'd known, if you like. Janet, kick us off.
Hello. Great. It's good to start. That works. Hi, everybody. Thrilled to be here. So huge thanks to Like Minds, We Are Like Minds, and Ollie. I think the topic I'll probably choose is going global. So I spend a lot of my time really helping high-growth businesses who've been around 2 or 3 years. They're really demonstrating growth. I've created a program to really help them be successful in international markets. So how do you sort of, from a startup to scale up, really start that journey, and when should you start that journey? And there's no probably right answer to that, because if you're a marketplace, you may want to go into 40 countries at once. But I think, I mean, gosh, there's so many tips that I could share, even within those other subsectors of talent, raising finances before you expand internationally. I think one of the probably most important things that I've learned over the last few years is whether you're scaling, whether you're going from startup to scale up here in the UK, here in Exeter, or if you're looking to go global, you can't emphasize enough. You've got to listen to your customers, listen to your team, and also listen to those who've been there before. So we do a lot of work where we identify mentors who are entrepreneurs who've actually taken that step. They've expanded into Paris, they've expanded into San Francisco. Talk to people like that. There's incredible networks out here. And there'll be networks here in Exeter, there'll be networks across Devon, there's networks across the UK. Really, really use them. So,
Janet, in terms of translation, though, you've got a brand, you've been having customers here, maybe the occasional accidental bit of exporting. But if you want to then push into that international market, is it pedal to the metal, full steam ahead, or is there any translation thinking that has to go into how that brand then appears overseas?
Yeah, so the brand is critical, and also you've got to do your homework. There's no quick win in this world, as you probably all know if you're entrepreneurs. So you must do your homework, do your research in that local market. And some of that research just could be desk research on Google. You don't have to start employing, expensive researchers to do this. But when you're going into a market, think about the brand of your business, think about the brand of yourself, particularly if you're the entrepreneur and you're the founder. You're going in to build a new customer base. The first thing they'll look at, they'll probably Google you. They won't necessarily go on your website as the first thing they do. So make sure that you're really comfortable and familiar with what your profile looks like on the web.
Sorry, Janet, don't mind me. It's just, can I tell you what's
Sorry,
happening?
wind.
It's the fan. I just keep expecting a key change. So I'm just going to adjust the fan. Is that all right?
Okay.
Sorry, I know this isn't very professional, but it is
Just
slightly
unplug it.
freaking me out, seeing your
I'll
hair.
just keep talking, and then Ollie can do the entertaining
seen
bit.
anything- have you ever seen anything like this? I'm
Behind.
terribly sorry.
So yes,
Was it occurring to anyone else about this? I'll just get... No. It was a thing, wasn't it? It was a thing. Sorry, Janet.
so yeah.
Sorry.
So,
Sorry, you'll kill me later for that, but that was better.
and then tailor your brand. If the colour of your brand here in the UK is orange and you're going out to a market, just test it a little bit. Go and talk to people. So you do have to go over there, not just do your homework, but you've actually got to spend a lot of time in that market talking to the customers. Use your professional networks, your personal networks, to get as much information as you can before you go into certain markets.
Yep. Good. Thank you. Julie, I'm going to paint a very specific picture because I know you're going to talk about talent. And it's that gut-sinking feeling when somebody brilliant on your team says they're leaving. So I'm talking about retaining talent. Practical tips to avoid the very best leaving you as a scale-up company.
Yeah, we all go through those moments in time, and I can definitely relate to a couple of times where that's happened in recent years, and my heart has hit the floor, because it's definitely someone who brings enormous value to the business, but equally brings a great value to the workplace. Is someone who is great to work with. And by the time they make that announcement, you are, within a hair's breadth of that, they've made the decision. They don't come and make that announcement without having thought about it, probably a couple of weeks, if not more. But you've still got an opportunity for a conversation. And I would encourage everyone to, don't let that moment pass and just shake hands and say goodbye. At least have that conversation about why, what's led up to this. What can I learn at this moment in time that will at least stop other people from taking this choice? And I'm a big advocate, I have been for many, many years at Cosmic, that when you recruit people onto your team, you've got a responsibility to show them the sort of business they're coming into. You've got a responsibility to portray your ethos as a business. We're very strong.
How do you do that in practical terms?
So as a social enterprise, I think we've got a relatively easy job in painting this picture. We are all about social impact at the same time as running commercial services, highly professional, but with a huge heart and really meaning what we do in terms of social impact. So we will make that a part of our recruitment story. We will paint a picture for people to understand. When we bring people in for interviews, we will invite them to talk about their personal value set. We will invite them to bring an object and talk about that object as it relates to their passion and their values, and test with them in that conversation. But that's once you've started that discussion, you have to mean it, both as a business and personally. You have to mean and engage with those people at that level as part of your retention. So that moment when they come through your door and say, I'm going to go, you've got to mean it then as well, every step of the way.
I mean, one of the things, Darren, is when we're talking about culture, we come up with phrases, not that Julie has, but one can come up with phrases that everyone would agree with. So particularly on culture, Crowdcube, what sort of company do you think you're trying to develop? And who, diversity matters, but then again, you want a certain type of person, or have I got that a bit wrong?
Bit of a curveball there. I thought I was going to talk about equity
No,
finance.
you are in a minute. Don't worry. But I want to build on this thought.
Culture is super important to Crowdcube, and it has been from day one, I guess. And being based in the Southwest, we've always really been focused on the work-life balance. And in the Southwest, we think it's easier to achieve that than probably in London or the Southeast in general. So I guess this kind of relates to recruitment as well. So the types of people we've been recruiting are the people that fit into our culture, that value that work-life balance and have real interests outside of work, and also value what the Southwest can bring to them. So we have a lot of people who surf, kite surf, mountain bike, like walking, all those kind of things.
Yes.
And we actually attract people into Exeter and into Crowdcube in Exeter because of that work-life balance.
Yeah.
Outside of, from London and often from outside of London, we've recruited our head of product from California.
Yeah.
So that is really important for us.
And zooming into that then, if you have a team member who is, for whatever reason, burning the midnight oil,
Yeah.
are you encouraging that? Are you actively discouraging that? Because you can send powerful but sometimes subtle signals as a CEO, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, we try to make it clear to people that we set goals, we set objectives for individually and as teams, and we don't mind how you achieve those. Whatever it takes to achieve those in terms of hours, you can come in early, you can come in late, you can work weekends, you can work evenings. We just expect you to achieve those and reach your goals and objectives.
Yeah, I'm wondering how that would have gone down at Auto Trader, Rachel. Come in when you like, doesn't really matter when you knock off. I mean, how do we tread this line as people trying to scale up organisations? And Darren, I'll give you a chance to come back on stuff.
The culture at Auto Trader was, in early years, quite work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
So I have burnt a lot of midnight oil. I've been the last one in the bar till 5 a.m, still in my ball dress, because
Yes.
we've been out doing hospitality, and then you've got a 6 a.m. meeting with the CEO.
Such is your commitment to that.
Been there, done it. But it actually, you can't do it long term. You burn out.
Yeah,
Everybody
people
burns
burn
out.
out, yeah.
So you've got to be able to keep that work-life balance.
Yeah. And more broadly, in terms of these 4 topics, which one would you have gone for? The
Well,
secret to scaling up.
the one thing that jumped out at me when you said those 4 topics was the theme that for me runs through all of them, which is trust. Because in business, you kind of can't get very far without trust, whether it's cash and customers, they have to trust you. Whether it's leadership, they have to trust you. Trust is difficult to fake.
Yeah.
And
So-
anybody that tries will probably fail.
So that is a very easy statement to agree with. What's an example of the opposite of that you've seen that you would have deemed unhealthy or unhelpful?
In the past, you asked me about recruitment questions. You want to know that your customers are being well looked after by your people, and so I would test people's integrity by asking them questions like, it's the last day of the month, you want to hit your target. If you hit your target, you're going to get your bonus, and we all know what that means. But you need to sell one more product, but it's something the customer doesn't need. What do? Do you hit your target and sell it?
Yes.
Or do you walk away and say it's not the right thing?
Yes. Has anyone ever fallen into that elephant trap?
Absolutely.
I know in practice, but in interview, hopefully not. Ajay, where would you go with this? You've raised money, you employ 750 people.
That's right.
Would you go to talent, or your expertise is marketing, I know?
So I think one of the topic that I'll take is branding.
Yeah.
When you look at SMEs, what I've seen is a lot of people are confused about branding and they spend a lot of money in branding. But for startups and SMEs, branding, you don't spend money, branding happens for you. You get customer, you do well for your customer, and the customer speaks for you, that's branding. You can't spend money and fool your customers saying that you're a big brand. Okay, so that's one area that you need to be very careful with. And second is people join people. In the early stages of your business, there's no business, as in my customers have worked with me saying that, I don't know what's your name of your company, but I know you. So the trust is basically the character that you own and the competing strength that you have in the market. So these two combined is the trust that you bring on, and people join people.
And in the very, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so that's like, in terms of branding, don't focus on too much about, investing on social media and other things. Maintain the hygiene, but focus. And one critical thing that I'll tell you is, don't tell your agency to come up with your brand message. Let your operation team, let your founders, co-founders come up with the theme and the positioning for your company, because unless your operation team owns the overall ethos of your company, no matter what the brand speaks about it, unless that's followed in your company, it's never going to be the promise that it's going to be delivered. So
Yeah, I mean, Julie, you must have seen the opposite of that, though. Sometimes, companies need that support to find that right choice of words, don't they?
I think they do, and there are, many, many examples of companies that have done the opposite to what Adji's suggesting and paid the price for it, though. That, that it's about the link between what Rachel and Adji have just explained for us is trust.
Yep.
That, building a brand relies on that trust being there, inherently being there, and that we as businesses are trustworthy.
Yes.
That we demonstrate, and that includes making sure everyone on our staff team is a part of that message.
So can I just ask, particularly on this talent question, you've grown to 750 people, you're in just a small office, then you're going to be involved in every hire. At what point, if at all, do you let go of that personal involvement as a founder with the people that come into your company?
So after a certain period, what you do is you don't manage people, you manage processes, and processes manage people. So like I have 7 layers, 7 people who manages those layers. Yeah. So I make sure that I am involved with them at the process level. So I don't involve them at the people level because they are supposed to be completely free.
Okay.
They are supposed to do whatever they want. But the core principles are clear, that these are the principles that you're supposed to follow. But yes, we do come together every, maybe on a fortnightly basis and look at the processes where we need improvement in the processes.
Okay, I'm just thinking in practical terms, when was the threshold you went across as a company where you did not meet somebody joining your own company? What was that threshold? I don't know if, Darren, you've crossed that threshold, but when was it for you?
Anywhere about 70, 80, there are people who are sitting in your company, you wonder whether they work for you or it's some guest who has come in.
Yes.
And all of those awkward situation happens. And I've seen that one person used to come with another employee of ours. Yeah. And I asked the HR, is he working for us or he's coming with this guy?
Yes,
so those things happens once you scale up, and that there's no option for it.
Okay, well, I'm going to press pause in a minute and ask for some questions, some thoughts from the audience. Darren, I must get you on funding because you've been on your own funding journey, but you've seen people on the platform presumably make mistakes, learn lessons. If you had to distill some of those today, what would you share?
I think it's really about, this comes back to fundamental business planning, really. It's about planning your business, planning your cash needs, planning your financing needs over a long period of time. And there's a lot of people out there that don't really do that. So I think it's really important. It sounds really boring, but having a business plan and having cash flow forecasts associated with that really gives you a really good vision of where your company is going, what your funding needs are going to be at different milestones. I think what's really, really important is to understand, get that timing right. So if you can raise money off the back of having just hit a particular milestone, then that fundraise will be much easier. And of course, you've got to think of what the future milestones are after that so that you can say to your investors, yes, if you invest in us, then these are the other things that we're going to do to grow and appreciate your investment in your business. So that planning, well ahead of time is really, really important.
And as they put together their numbers, what do people typically, if you can generalize, what do they tend to miscalculate? What are the lines that turn out to be absolute nonsense?
Well, valuation is really super hard, especially at the earlier stage of companies when they're raising money. And if you get that wrong, it can really scupper your fundraising because people aren't. If it's too high, people aren't going to want to invest. If it's too low, probably matters less, but it matters more to you because you're going to lose more of your company.
Yeah, and on that, Janet, you've launched Go to Grow, which is the Mayor of London's international business programme. It's difficult to generalise, but what lessons have you seen companies learn the hard way?
I think what I've sort of noticed really in relating to the whole funding question is I totally agree in terms of the preparation, the data. I think what we've noticed is entrepreneurs tend to think bottom up a lot of the time, not all the time, and investors are looking sort of top down.
Just say what that means.
So they're looking, when you're an entrepreneur, and many of you may relate to this, is they're looking at sales, they're looking at revenue, and they're looking at just getting to that next sort of 12 months, maybe 2 years. Investors, probably even more so over in the US than here, they're looking at that scalability, they're looking at that vision, they're looking at where that business is going to go. And what I've really experienced in the last couple of years is businesses who don't really have their story nailed. And I think if they can focus on one thing that they do brilliantly and sell that, whether they're talking to a VC, whether they're talking to a new customer, those are the ones who are succeeding. They absolutely nail it because they're focused. Those that aren't focused, and we take them out to Silicon Valley or Paris, wherever, And they've got a fantastic business, but they just can't tell that story.
Yeah.
So that's
I
critical.
guess the flip side of that is, to a certain extent, startups are a bit of an experiment in search of a scalable model. So I wonder, Julie, in your mind, is there any argument, a counter-argument for experimentation, for the scattergun approach, or as Janet nailed it with her point of focus?
I think the answer for me is that it relies on the business because, Cosmic, we're 21 years old this year and we're just scaling up now. If I reflect on that, this year we've grown from 17 staff to 32.
So what changed? What was the inflection? What triggered it?
I think a different way of dealing with our narrative is certainly boosting, and that's what I was just reflecting on as Janet. I think we understand better how to position ourselves in the market, both locally and regionally. Mm-hmm. We have developed more strategic relationships in the last 3 years than we ever have.
Yep.
So I think, we've organically grown, we've done all the heavy lifting, we've done huge amounts of burning the midnight oil, and it's only now that we've got that question on our minds.
This is fascinating, though, isn't it? Because we're talking about quite an inflection there. It sounds like quite a lot of that was internal to the team, perhaps even mentally, psychologically. What helped trigger that? Was it an intervention, a meeting, an away day? Goodness knows. What did it?
It's about going back to the point, it's about the talent on the team and understanding how to nurture their involvement. We've done 2 business acquisitions in that period of time, so we bring in not just fresh talent and new ideas, but new strategic thinkers, including my co-chief exec, Kate, was one of those acquisitions. So, there are, and we're working with new partners who we open ourselves up to challenge. To be challenged on a regular basis. And when you make that your mindset, when you create that narrative and explain that to the stakeholders, bingo.
Yeah, and that changes a lot. Who's got a question? Could be the whole panel or one person in particular, or just something that our conversation so far has made you recognise. And feel free to say who you are, but you don't have to. It is all on the record, though.
Hello.
We got that mic? Is that handheld as a blue
Hello,
one?
hello.
Yep,
That's
go
better.
for it. Yep.
Hi, I'm Danny Gosling from Thinkography, and I specialise in branding for small businesses. And I really wanted to reinforce what Aji and Julie have been saying about trust. I would use the word authenticity. And when Aji says that in the early days of your business, you are your business, I think that authenticity is incredibly important, and much more important than... Don't set out to be the business you think you are or that you think your customers want you to be. Yeah. It's much, much easier to be yourself.
Yeah, and on the basis, though, that I've never heard anyone set out a case for inauthenticity, what is an example of a company being inauthentic, just to help our minds get going?
Well, I think I've certainly, in my early days, felt the need to present my business as being larger than it is. That I wasn't a one-man band. Yeah. That, don't worry, guys, I've got this huge team of people behind me. Yeah. And my epiphany on that was when I sat in front of a customer in a pitch, or a potential customer in a pitch, and they asked me, how I was going to deliver the project. And I said, well, I've got a great team of freelancers, and this is my copywriter guy. And he looked at me quizzingly and said, but we want you. I want your reassurance that you're going to be involved at all the stages. And that was a crucial moment there, because what the potential customer had bought into was me. Yes. This is exactly what Aji was saying. Yes. What my business was called and what I thought it was going to be was irrelevant to him. He wanted me as I was then.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. That's very helpful. Other voices, other observations, could be a question. I'm looking around to see some hands. I'll come back across here. That's just here. Please.
Hello, April Rose. I own a company called April for Health, and I try and get people to think about health before they think about wealth, really. My actual question is, have any of you got a book or a film or something like that really pivotally changed how you think about things and took you somewhere else that I can write down?
Yeah, that is a brilliant question. We're going to do a super quick fire down the whole panel, a book or a film, in a minute, but I want to get another voice in the blue shirt.
Hello, I'm Richard Stockdale from the Environment Agency. You may have noticed during the break we swapped out some of the plastic water bottles for renewable ones and more sustainable things. So we've all got a role to play on marine plastics. My question is, how important is environmental sustainability to both business and brand?
Good. Yeah, and also we might encourage them to give a practical example of how they live by that, or anything like that. Would anyone like to? Let's do the quick fire. Let's get that out of the way. April, have you got your pen and pencil ready? I might start with you, Rachel, if that's all right. A book or a film that has in some way changed your life or business life?
I think the book I would probably recommend...
Sorry, let's get you the mic.
Okay. Yeah, hi. Hi, April, by the way. This is the first time we've met, but you've been in my Facebook group for weeks. Hello. Sorry, everyone. The book that I would say, if you want to know more about sales and you want the sales that you make to be very human, Daniel Pink's book, To Sell is Human, is a really good one.
Good.
Or The Challenger Sale, which is another great one.
Very good, thank you. Ajay?
So yeah, when it comes to books, I think there are probably a lot of books that inspire. If I want to take one of the departments which everybody is struggling, that's hiring. So you can look at a book called Hire With Your Head by Louis Alder. That's one of the best books that you can read about how to hire people. And that has changed the way we hire people.
Great, Hire With Your Head, thank you. Judy?
Rise of the Humans by Dave Coplin, probably 2 years ago now. Gave me hope.
Oh, good. Rise of the Humans. Thank you, Darren.
Mine's The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz.
Yes.
I'm sure lots of you might have
This
read.
is Andreas and Horowitz on the West Coast. Good. Janet?
No, I echo some of these recommendations, but also that one book I read in the last 6 weeks is called Brand Famous by Lindsay Boyd. And it's really well set out and gives you... I've completely changed the way I'm thinking about the brand and about thinking top down. It completely changes your mindset on how you think about brand.
Okay.
Brand Famous.
Thank you. If anyone has time to link to any of those books using our hashtag LikeMinds, that will be an act of generosity, so thank you very much. Janet, provocative question. Am I right in thinking that startups and scale-ups don't have the time or the energy to worry about the planet?
Some do, and I wish they all did. And I think it goes back to some of our earlier keynotes. It's around that, having that mission and having real purpose in what you're doing. And that also, that thread leads right through to your narrative, your story. So I think those businesses that are becoming more and more successful are those that do genuinely, authentically, have that sustainability at the heart of everything they're doing.
Yep.
They're winning business, they're able to articulate their story, and they will be winners in the end. I truly believe that.
Does anyone else want to come in on any of those questions or observations? And then I'm just going to rush to take some more voices as well. Yeah, Ajay, please, yeah. Have you got a mic out there? We'll get one to you.
So as a startup or as a growing company, it does not need that you're doing a great thing for the planet, but you are influencing everyone who's working with you. So like say for example, when I went and trained the team at HP, everyone who attended the training, we planted a tree on their behalf with a number to it. And all of these trees were fruit trees. And you can track, and it's helping somebody's livelihood. And what happens is everyone who attended it, and we have given them a certificate, they went back home, and they said that this is what has happened, and then they started doing it. So smaller things can happen. So whenever we get a new client, everybody in the team is supposed to know that we have got a new client. So we plant a tree on the client's behalf so that everybody knows about it. And it's not difficult to do, it's just easy to do, Yeah, it's like, and then people get to know, and you can, and as a leader, you have the option to influence people. Don't forget that you believe in it, and then start influencing people.
Thank you, Ajay. You're not just looking after it, you've got a question as well.
I do have a question. Having started businesses myself and been relatively successful, there'll be a lot of entrepreneurs in the room today who are at the beginning of their journey. And I think maybe it's good to hear from folks like this about the idea of honesty and personally for me, I think luck played a big role in achieving a lot. So, and I think maybe it'd be nice to hear from you guys about what you think about luck in achieving our goals, because we don't want to place ourselves on pedestals so that we're not, so it becomes hard for others to try and attain.
That's a great question. Really, really nice. Any lucky breaks we might come back and reflect on? I saw a hand, it was just over here. I wonder how we'll get that. Here we go, can I skip down here? Feel free to say who you are, but you don't have to. I'll come around the other end.
My name is Blessing. I'm from Falmouth University. I'm studying a master's in entrepreneurship. So on the subject of long-term financial planning when you're starting up a business, what advice would you give entrepreneurs to help them not be too optimistic about the numbers? How do you kind of keep yourself grounded and make sure that the numbers that you're presenting to investors are actually realistic?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And was there we'll be super quick. I will go down to this gentleman here. While I'm roaming, Darren, I saw a smile flicker across your lips there. Any thoughts on that final question there? What came to your mind as it was being asked?
I don't know, really. I mean, you just got to be honest with yourself, haven't you? I mean, it's if you're forecasting, then generally it is a forecast, so it's not going to be hugely accurate. But I would just bounce it off a number of different people, get other people's opinions, and see what they say. It's not easy.
And it's not easy. Let's just get a final question, then we'll call on some responses. Yeah.
My name's Caleb Storkey, writer with Mentor on the book Future-Proof. Darren, I love what you just started to say there about culture, and I feel like it'd be lovely to dig in about that a bit further, because so much of the time businesses are built in the big cities, and obviously Crowdcube has utterly killed it and nailed it. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you've created that culture and what that work-life balance looks like, but specifically I'd love to see, where do your team find meaning in their work?
Wow, small question there for you, Darren.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Caleb.
I don't know if I can answer that, really. Where do they find meaning in their work? I'd have to ask them. I mean, the culture piece for us is, by being in the Southwest, we have just attracted the right kind of people who do the right kind of work in work, but also value it outside of work. And we just continue to recruit those similar kind of people. And what we try to do is, when we do our recruiting, we try to get people to recruit people like themselves. So that's what culture means to us. We have a number of values in our company which we try to instill in everybody, which means that when people are recruiting, they're using those values to assess the person they're speaking to see whether they would fit in culturally within the business. Does that make sense?
And in that sense, Darren, as you're interviewing, any red flag, any sort of person that, frankly, is not going to fit?
I don't think so. I mean, everybody's individual, aren't they? It's
good.
It's done on an individual basis.
No, that's brilliantly refreshing to hear. Thank you. Would any of our panel confess to lucky breaks? Yes, Julie and then Rachel. Or Rachel, then Julie, why not? Yeah.
Oh, okay, I've got the mic. Look, I had a lucky break, and I'm only in month 10 of my business, so I literally am starting up. I won one of those put your business card in a pot things where you get pulled out. It's a Friday afternoon. My name got called out, and I thought, oh, brilliant, Friday afternoon, I've won a bottle of wine. And they said, well done, Rachel, you've won the talk. I said, what do you mean, the talk? Where's my wine? And it's Friday afternoon, and it nearly is in a minute. Where's my wine? And they said, oh, you've got a talk. It's 15 minutes, go. And I literally had to stand up and do this talk. And this is the thing about luck. This was my lucky break. I had 15 minutes to talk, and what I was told was pitch your business. In that split-second moment, I decided not to, because I thought that'd be a bit sad and really not very interesting for other people to listen to. So I got up and I told them a story, but it was a futuristic story about what I wanted the business to look like in 2 years. And people found that a lot more engaging and started tweeting, Rachel Howarth, #2-year dream, go girl. And what that did for me on that day, which was something like 6 weeks into my startup, was make other people go, wow, she's starting up, but she knows what she wants in 2 years' time. So the thing about luck is, did I make it for myself because I chose to do that, or was that just a lucky day? Don't know, but you can make your own luck.
No, love it. We're going to run out of time, but I'll go very quickly, Julie, and Janet, I know you've got something up your sleeve as well.
So it's a pun, so you'll love it, because mine was literally a broken leg. I nearly lost my right leg 5 years ago in a dreadful, dreadful accident. The result of which, and that doesn't sound lucky, does it? But here's my reflection with you. The result of which, literally for 3 months, I had to stay in bed. Wow. Hardly moving at all. But there was no way I was not going to work. There was no way that this had to be switched off. So guess what? I had 3 months of reflecting, of 3 months of thinking about the next stage, 3 months of being mostly removed from the workplace.
It's fascinating how many people this has happened to. The guy who created Big Bird, same story. Gordon Brown, same story. Seriously, very interesting reflections through that reflection. Janet.
No, just quickly, I'm a big believer in that you do create your own luck to quite a large degree, and these two stories we've just heard is very much about they took that opportunity and turned it into a positive.
Yeah.
So that's really important. And I'm really interested in what Darren just said about people recruiting people like themselves, because I'm a big believer in actually trying to recruit people who are very different to yourself in order to get a diverse team, but we're probably running out of time now. But I just think that diversity is critical when you're scaling. So I just found that really interesting.
Yes.
Can I ask Darren a question?
Super quickly, and then we'll
So
all
are
change.
you able to create a diverse culture by recruiting people like yourselves?
When I say I don't mean that, if I was recruiting, I'd recruit a middle-aged, white, balding man. I'd want them to recruit somebody who believes in the same things and has the same values as they do.
Okay, good. We have been beaten by the clock. Would you agree? It was a good, terrific panel, ladies and gentlemen. Please, thank you, Darren, Janet, Julie, Aji, Rachel. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We'll take just a minute to reset the stage, but you don't have to stand up if you don't want to, but let's just reflect on what we've seen or have a moment to ourselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon. No, not quite. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ollie, for the introduction. It's my job for the next 20 minutes or so, as an evangelist, to try and convince you that what he just said was right, that voice is the future, we believe it's the future, and we think you can apply lots of things to it. So for about 20 minutes or so, my job is to tell you all about that. So to introduce, think about like minds today and what we're all here for, and the little interjections where you've been asked to speak to each other. We think that is the way everybody likes to behave, and everybody naturally behaves. But in technology, we've gone backwards. So in the last 40 years, as you see, we've had gadgets that have been built to touch, to type, horrible grey boxes in the corner that just aren't naturally how we behave from the day we're born, because the first thing we do is speak. And we think that's wrong. But technology's gradually worked its way back as it's improved to get a little bit nearer to how we naturally speak to each other and have our own sensors that are built into us, how we communicate. And we think as Amazon and as an industry increasingly, that's going to be the way everybody will deal with technology and how we will naturally start to behave. So think about that for a second. But we'll start with a quote. So many of you will have reached for a mobile phone in the last 2 minutes probably, when we had a little break. Forrester Research did some thinking on this very deep with marketers and developers and other companies about 3 years ago specifically, and came out with the concept of the mobile moment, which they very specifically defined as this: the moment in space and time someone pulls out a mobile device to get what they want in immediate context. They know because they trust there's a source of that information immediately available to them in their pocket. But even that has a level of friction to it, because you have to reach for the thing, you have to unlock it. And I'm not doing a live demo today because I got burnt last week taking the mick out of Apple and their live demo going wrong, and mine went wrong straight afterwards, so I've left that out today. But you get the point. There is a level of friction that doesn't need to be there, and this is where we think everything's going. The next natural extension of that mobile moment is where we are. Now think about a use case for that. If you're watching sport on television, there's one I really want to do in the next few months. Watching, say, football, cricket, could be anything. Many times you will say to yourself, how many was that? Has he done that before? Who's the referee? What's his history? And all these things that the broadcast doesn't always give you. Why can't you just do what you would do in the house or in the pub and ask the person next to you, except the person might be the television? Very, very easily, with a source of data, as the mobile moment proved, data is readily available. So why can't we just make that available through the screen, through a speaker, and you ask? Just ask in the room. It's a concept we call ambient computing because it doesn't seem to be there, but it works. That's the use case that's very instinctive to everyone, I hope, and you get the idea. And this is the sort of thing we're aiming to do. And it's all about steps over the decades in terms of technology. Every 10 years or so, something happens that makes us think, but it also makes us expect a little bit more than we used to. So if you think, if you're as old as me, the first thing you might have used was teletext or something along those lines, where you might have typed 301 to get the weather. I forget what the numbers are now, it's been so long. But everybody built up an expectation who had one of these TV sets. You wouldn't call it a device back then, but that's what it was, to get some information. Step on from that, you got to computers, which many people had, with interfaces a little bit more rich. You could input differently. You got more back from them. Step on to that 10 years on. The web democratized it. Anybody could build one of these interfaces and connect it to everybody else's. Hyperlinks joined them all together to make them much easier to discover. Think about that step 10 years ago and whether you expected mobile phones to go that way. You probably didn't. You probably didn't expect to be looking at a phone. Somebody said to me the other day, the new iPhone's £1,000 or something like that. But think about something that you touch every 2 minutes in your life, and the value of it is probably a lot more than £1,000 because that's your expectation. So we're trying to get to the stage beyond that. We think the next natural step and the next decade jump will be voice recognition and the application of it. So we believe as a company, and increasingly as an industry, as I say, voice is that next big disruption that we've talked about a little bit this morning already. And how to use it is the next thing. But we believe that's the disruption that everybody needs to be aware of and know about. But don't just take our word for it. There's a book which I happily recommend to everyone, not just because it's on sale in the Amazon store, but it is the best-selling book about voice interfaces by a lady called Kathy Pearl, who didn't come to this industry. She's adapted into it. And she says, the second line's the important one to me, make it so we ourselves act less like computers and more like people. Because we said at the start, we've built technology to do things that aren't native to us. So we're having almost to retrain ourselves to trust a voice service, which is something we should instinctively use, because it's what we do. Kathy Pearl, as a voice designer, believes the training is not necessarily just in technology, it's training ourselves to use these systems, trust, adapt, utilize, and change them for the better. So we did something 2.5 years ago called the Amazon Echo. And the other night we launched about 300 new ones, which you might have seen. But this was our first way to try and build people's trust in devices and build the knowledge that they could use it very quickly in a room to do something from any angle. The reason I say this is if you look at the top of the device, there are 5 little gold beads, 6 little gold beads, in fact, and a 7th in the middle. The reason they're there is they create what's called a far-field array, which can listen from any direction. The theory being that when you speak to one of these microphones, it connects to you, it calls what we form a beam, so you're speaking directly to that one. The other microphones remain switched on, but they're throwing away the other noise in the environment that they pick up, so it hears you more clearly through the beam. And that's the way we start to build the trust that what you're being said is being heard clearly and correctly. And that's exactly what the Echo was designed to do. So it was no fluke. It's a nice looking device and it sells very well, but there's some technology in there that was meant to start building people's expectations that bit more. So this is how we got into it. It's done very well. We've opened up more use cases through different areas of the house. You can not just speak to an Echo. Pretty much every Amazon device now carries Alexa in some form. We just announced our music app the other day now has Alexa to drive itself. But it's all the same service underneath, which I'll come to. So all these use cases, we're starting to build different places and different ways you interact with Alexa and build that level of trust and expectation that you will get what you want. When customers love Alexa, and this is where I give away a prize, if anyone can tell me what that number might represent, I'll give away an Echo if anybody gets it, within 5 guesses or so. Sir? Oh, damn it. Have you seen this before? Okay. What did she say? She said, I'm not that kind of girl. Not that kind of girl. Okay. Okay. We changed the response. Keep asking, because you'll hear some good things over time. Spoiled my slide, but I'll give you something instead of an Echo if you want something else. That many people have asked Alexa to marry them, but it's proved the point that people have got over this hurdle to that sort of number in the world so far. And we're only available in 3 countries, remember. So 250,000 people have asked Alexa to marry them. We know this, just to give you a buy-off about privacy and all that, because we provide an answer to that question, because we thought people would ask it. So we know it's been answered that many times. Then you've got people like my friend here, and I'm not going to tell you what he's doing. You can see for yourself. And he said, and I quote, and we didn't make this up, if I knew relationships were this easy, I would have married 30 years ago, but now I've got Alexa, there's no need. He feels that way about it because it's doing what he wants. I don't know what he wanted from her, to be honest, but it's doing what he wants to the extent he's taking it to bed. So people have got over this hurdle of trust, the human behavior part. They're starting to use Alexa for themselves the way they want to. So that's the backstory and some fun. Why voice? And why has Amazon got into this in particular? So why are we doing it? Many people will hopefully recognize that. See, a few people did. That's the bridge of the enterprise in one of its forms. It may not surprise you to learn that in a tech company there are many Star Trek fans. So some years ago, some of those Star Trek fans, including the boss, decided that because of all the things we've been doing in cloud technology, machine learning, and so on, this must be possible all of a sudden. And it's not the most difficult thing to do, because the bridge of the enterprise didn't really answer back. You know, it took an instruction and delivered it, but that's all they wanted as a basic thing. And then you must be able to extend it to something a little bit more like HAL from 2001 Space Odyssey and that sort of thing. But the basic instruction level was what they wanted to do. But because we did that, we believe voice can and will be everywhere as a result. And we've started to prove that. And just the other day, to build on my example, BMW announced on stage on Wednesday night that they will be selling Minis next year with Alexa in the dashboard off the shelf. And that'll be part of the sales that they make. Other models too. Ford already committed, Volkswagen already committed, but I think BMW will be first in the forecourt and announced it yesterday. Think about hands-free as a use case for voice. It's a natural thing. Some cars already do it. You can dial your phone by voice through the dashboard, or it's connected to a phone. This is a complete standalone thing, but it does anything. You could ask Alexa to marry from the car if that's what you wanted to do, sir. So that sort of thing becomes available everywhere without any friction. Then think about kitchens. It's not one we expected overnight, but very quickly, people started to use Echoes as the world's most expensive egg timer. But because they started to do that, they build repeat behavior. They do the same thing every day, so they think, I'm going to try something else. My mum at 77 is living proof of this, that she's asked for something, the time even, and she's done something else the next day. So people started to ask for recipes. And thankfully, one of our partners, Campbell's Soup, offered recipes, which were their first to market with it. Then you ask something else, and kitchens are now a massive use case for Alexa. But it's led to more things. Smart home is also a massive use case, but it leads directly from the behavior in the kitchen. There is now an oven that can be controlled by Alexa having recipe instructions. So as you get through the instructions step by step, the oven is being timed and controlled because it knows what step you're at. So you don't have to touch the oven. It's less of a distraction. It's also complete laziness, but it means you're not burning energy to get to environmental concerns that you haven't needed because your head's in a book. So that's the sort of thing that starts to happen. And once you get into smart home, turning on your bulbs, turning off your bulbs, things like that, my heating's controlled by Alexa, the TV channels, all that stuff, you do get to the level, like my son, where he shouts at everything, aged 9, where he used to touch TV screens expecting them to be big tablets. Now he shouts at the fridge and things like that because he expects it to work. And in 10 years, it'll answer him back. We have a fridge in the market that you can ask questions of. And it sounds ridiculous that a fridge might be Alexa connected, but I've told you, kitchens are one of the biggest use cases we have. So why wouldn't you have one of the main things in your kitchen permanently installed, have Alexa in it, rather than having a separate device? Why not just have a kitchen gadget that answers back? And that's the sort of thing we're starting to enable. But again, don't take my word for it necessarily. Walt Mossberg, who was the sage of The Verge, The Wall Street Journal, things like that, retired in the summer. He was the guy Steve Jobs used to give his phones to before they launched to make sure they weren't nuts. He said this in his very final column for The Verge, that ambient technology will be the next thing. Not just voice necessarily, but the technology of sensors that know something's been triggered and something needs to happen. We believe voice is the interface to retrieve and instruct, but there may be other environmental things that inform the instruction, such as, he says, a change in your blood chemistry. So Apple had phones last week that monitor your heart rate almost constantly, which is a good thing. You may ask questions of that and what to do with it. So voice is an augmentation of this sensory intelligence that's in the environment, and as he says, capabilities that don't seem to be there, but you know they are because you trust and expect them to work. So why Alexa? This is where we come in. So Amazon's got this theory that it's doable. We've got the background that it's been coming. So why Alexa and why now? I'll not do a sales pitch because it's a short one, but we offer something called the Alexa Skills Kit, which is what I go out and promote and help people to build with, where you as content owners can build a language model where you probably think you couldn't have done before you started it, and build your own conversation that exposes your information and your conversation to Alexa users. And this is how many people have got into Alexa. They've built something that they've got answers for, so we help them define and listen for the right questions to give the answer back. On the other side, on the right, we have the Alexa voice service, which is how people enable fridges to have Alexa in them. We give away all the software that connects Alexa's voice to deliver the answers from the skills kit, ultimately. But anyone who has a device with a speaker and a microphone can make an echo, a fake one, but they can make a working echo. You can make it for about $4 with a Raspberry Pi if you fancy doing something for the weekend. It's really easy. The voice service is what everybody uses to do that, including BMW, for example, who just launched their car. So far, we've got about 20,000 skills, slightly higher than that. So that's the number of things, brands that you can engage with on Alexa that will deliver an answer through a conversation. When I started to do these talks about 6 months ago, that number was 3,000. So in the space of a year, we've got a lot of traction on that, and you can see the sort of path it's starting to go, and that's carrying on. You'll see the number change over the next few months, and you get to know some brands that you recognize. So again, to show that we're fairly neutral in what Alexa is allowed to do, Ocado have built a skill based around their online shop, which is what we are at the end of the day, but they've done this and they're very happy to be part of it because they believe in the repeat behavior, especially with devices in kitchens. You will fill your shopping basket choosing Ocado as the fulfillment, and they're very happy to be part of it. Others, DVLA just went live a month or two ago. You can now ask Alexa if your car's taxed, because many people, as of 2 years ago I think it was, you don't get tax discs. Many people don't know their car's not taxed. You should know it's taxed and it's MOT, but you can find out. In truth, many people will use that to find out if their neighbour's car is taxed, but that's okay. That's okay, but I used to run a site called myhouseprice.com many years ago, and everybody looked at their neighbours. That's what it was. EasyJet spotted this. They don't want to sell flights on it just yet because they think that's cumbersome, but they've done, is my flight on time? Nice and easy use case. Before you leave the house, Am I going to be late, early? So it's an easy one to get through. Domino's, which my son used far too much, so I turned it off. Ask Domino's to feed me. It delivers your last order again. Just a repeat thing. And the one that I like that validates this whole thing, based on the mobile moment that I talked about, O2 are in this telling you your balance, top up, minutes you've got left, things, your allowances, things like that. This is something they do on their platform. They sell phones, but they still think Alexa is an easier way to get to the information, so they offer it as a voice service. So that's validation that we do prove it's useful enough that people who run their own service will do it through ours. And that's a good validation that we've gone the right way. Quickly, there's some other examples of the voice service. Won't dwell on these too much, but many brands have decided to bake Alexa into things they make, manufacturers mostly of technology, such as these, where you've got thermostats you can speak directly to rather than having an Echo send the instruction to them, through to other speakers that may look like an Echo but aren't, and we couldn't care less. If somebody wants to sell something like an Echo that delivers Alexa, then that's great because it gets it into the market. Headphones, phones, robots, cars, all sorts of things. I love the fridge. I recommend everybody to get one. It's got a door that you knock on, it becomes transparent. So really, really nice. So why now? And I'll try and wrap this up as quickly as I can, because I think I'm going over a little bit. Speech recognition has improved so much in the last 3 or 4 years. About 50 years ago, you could only recognize 0 to 9 in digits reliably, and that was it. And it took 10 more years to add 4 more words to make a calculator out of that. So from a phone dialer to a calculator, 10 years of technical work, mainframes and things like that. Since the 70s, that's got easier. And you can see on the graph towards the right-hand side, as an industry, we now believe we can understand the words within 95% of any spoken phrase. And think about that for a second, in any language. But that level of accuracy is now achieved. It's not achievable, it's been done. But we're on the path to get to 99% because we believe that's when the mass adoption happens, that everybody will trust what they say, will be picked up, understood, and responded to. So we believe for developers, which is why I do this, need to get involved in the next 3-4 years as that curve starts to really fire up. It might be quicker, the way technology goes. But we think when we do that, we need to teach people not to do it too quickly. So we don't think voice, you dive in and do the really hard thing first. Start with something fairly simple. So we talk about the principle of crawling, walking, and running, which is what you've seen with people like EasyJet who do the simple thing first, prove it works, and then open a slightly harder one. So crawl, core functionality that works. What will people use? Listen to what people do, optimize it, do something else, expand it, then run and evolve it to something much more complicated. Mobile app developers tend to go the other way. They tend to do too much and refine it back again. So we're trying to enforce at the start, because voice is still something nascent to all of us, to make sure we don't abuse it. So think about a traffic skill. Every day, National Rail does this with their Alexa skill. You can ask if your train's on time, which it probably isn't. So you know if you've got an extra 5 minutes in the house. But all you do is set it up once and ask, is my train on time? Every day. Nice repeat behavior. Over time, you will trust that it can answer something you didn't ask. So you say, is my train on time? Yes, but your walk at the other end might be delayed because of something. So add a little bit of value to the answer, which gives people trust they might ask something else. And then over time, once we enable it, you might notify somebody of things they haven't asked. So if you know the train's late, or you know there's been an accident on the road, tell them at the given time of day it's going to be relevant. And that's something we will get to, undoubtedly, but we want to be careful that people won't abuse that, so we're being careful to roll it out. But that shows how a skill might evolve over time. But there's also touch points you might think about that aren't necessarily high or low value, but we think there's different entry points you might make that are worthwhile. So at the most basic level, and we use this for Prime Now and Black Friday and Prime Day and things like that, tell me what's on sale. Simple question, fairly complicated answer. You might get what you want, you might not. It's what we call a browse. Similar to pressing the lucky button on Google, almost. Telling, a quick reference point, tell me about something. There are many skills in Alexa that we tell you about something that people have built that they've got a specialist knowledge of. Something higher than that, you ask Ticketmaster, say, is there a gig for a band on a date? The answer should be complicated because you want to know if there's tickets left. What tiers are they in? What value are they? Can you go at all? Things like that. To the very highest value to me, which is the simplest skill, turn the light on, turn the heating on, because really, if you think about it, there doesn't need to be a voice answer to that. Because if you ask for the light to come on and it came on, you've got what you wanted. So the highest value is almost the simplest one to make. To think about that, where you get into voice, if you choose to get into it, there are so many ways you might enter, some difficult, some not, but very high value to somebody, depending on what they ask. Just to close off, I'll give you a couple of things to think about. I can't play the video because it's a bit too long, but if you Google for Echo Silver, Saturday Night Live in the US did a bit of comedy about Echo to try and make out that old people can't use technology. It was made of wood, for example, and things like that. It would answer to any name because they couldn't remember the word Alexa. It gave an answer to everything they said to make it out they were interested in what the old person was saying, and things like that. But it's not true. If you look at one of the studies we've seen from MIT and Boston, they planted Echo Dots in the rooms of old people's homes on the East Coast without any instruction and just told them, when you have a minute, if you want to, ask it something. And our friend Lois, who was part of this study, used to look out her curtain every morning to see if it was raining, and her day was ruined if it was looking like it was going to rain, so she went back to bed. Aged 89, that's a little bit harder than it used to be. So she just thought one day, when she woke up, Alexa, will it rain today? From the bed, and it gave her the answer, yes, 100%. So she pulled up the sheets and went back to sleep. And that's just how she lived. She did it a different way. All we've done is make it easier, but according to Lois, and as you see in the quote, she finds it more pleasant, more enjoyable. It's a better life just by doing something she did before a little bit more easily. Having a friend in the room almost was something she hadn't thought about either. So somebody at 89 was able to pick this up, having never touched a computer in their life. My mum's living proof of this at 77, never ever touched a phone, computer, but uses Alexa about 50 times a day, probably. Prove the point. And these are friends I used to work with at Skyscanner who were my first subjects when I built an Alexa flight search about 2.5 years ago. On the left, they are slightly bemused, never having seen any of this before and didn't really know what to do. 10 minutes later on the right, and I promise you it was 10 minutes later, and they didn't know they were being photographed, so I've had to get permission to use these. That's their natural reaction, including young Michael in the middle, when it worked. They genuinely get it and like it, and everybody at Skyscanner owns an Echo now because they went through this testing phase and they all believe in it. Genuinely, that's what people feel like when it works. And it's not hard to get to that if you think about the use cases and entry points I talked about before. So hopefully something to think about that maybe you hadn't before you came here today. I would very happily take questions outside, but please do email me if you have any more. I'm available all the time to answer online, Twitter or email. Please do get in touch. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you so much. Don't go away. David Lowe, everybody. Thank you. That was it's cracking. Will you come over here, David? I've got a couple of super quick questions for you. In terribly practical terms, and forgive me if you've already displayed the place to go, but how can we find out more? Is there a simple place to go, URL, just what should be in our minds?
If you go to alexa.design, that's our URL for everything you can do to design, build, conversation, structure, all that stuff.
Got it.
It's all there.
I think there's such enthusiasm and momentum, and I'm always conscious of sectors, industries that might get left behind. Is there any type of collaborator that you'd love to talk to and isn't quite as in the mix as you'd like them to be? Who would you like to be talking to that you're not?
My absolute obsession is councils and bins. I want to know what day the bins go out, because that's something I would ask in the kitchen every, I don't even know what day it is, forgive me. So I think it's a Thursday mine go out, but I don't know if it's the blue one or the green one or the grey one. Okay. I'm obsessed with every council in the country building one.
We'll talk to Kareem about that. Okay,
yeah,
so we'll get that
We've done
going.
about 5 of those. I'd like to have 380 or whatever the number is in England. So
okay, so that's a personal mission, very good.
Genuine obsession.
And finally, yes, question there? Yes,
somebody's built that already. So we have a thing called a news, it's called a flash briefing. It's like a news flash. So every day you can choose some news sources, and when you ask for the news, you get what's relevant and what's new. Somebody's built a flash briefing for that knows in your area if there's a flood coming or, that sort of thing. So it is done. We can open that out a bit more, but somebody's built that.
You've got another suggestion on row 1? So is this principally consumer or is this a B2B application? David.
This is very specifically consumer, but there's another part of Amazon that has a B2B version of this where you can plug it into things like call centers. So you can have a headset that speaks to Alexa inside a company. It's not called Alexa in that case, it's something.
Like you're sitting there and you want to know what your balance, you've got a challenging question around sales.
Right.
And you want some advice.
So somebody's built a plugin to Salesforce, for example, that takes a very complicated question and gives you a pre-baked default answer that they've made.
I can see what's. I think you're going to get a lot more questions. Can you join us for some of the rest of the day, David?
Stay till 5.
Yeah, I wish we had more questions. So David's going to stay with us till 5. But there we must leave it, except to ask, what does Alexa say when you ask her to marry you?
One of various things. I think yours was, I'm not that type of girl, I think. But there are random answers that keep getting changed.
Oh, so it's not personalised then?
It's not personalised, not yet.
Oh, there. Well. Watch this space. Ladies and gentlemen, David Lowe.
Thank you.
So I hope you'll agree we're hearing from some of the world's most interesting companies today, and we want lots of our storytelling to be very personal. And so I'm very excited to welcome our final speaker before our lunch break to the stage about her personal journey. Slightly intimidatingly for me, Dupsy Abiola used to be a barrister. She is now an entrepreneur, and dare I say a serial entrepreneur. Her specialist subject has become internships. She's the co-founder or the founder and CEO of Intern Avenue. She did go through that process of Dragon's Den. I won't steal her thunder and tell you how she got on. And I know for a fact she has some reflections of her journey so far. So please welcome to the stage, Dupsy Abiola.
Hi. Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here. I must say, I have an Alexa, and I love it. So I can attest, I ask it to play me music. I'm always playing music. Today, we've heard from some really amazing companies, Minters, talk about all the innovations. And certainly through my journey from going from a barrister to starting up a technology company, I've been interested in how I can do that. And one of the key parts of starting any business is finding the right investment partners. As has been alluded to, I've had a very kind of colourful journey doing that, and I'm going to be talking about cat herding 101, or fundraising effectively. So to tell you a little bit about my company, Intern Avenue, we connect employers with people who are looking to discover the best entry-level talent. In the journey of doing that, I've had to fundraise, raised $1 million in funding from angels. I've appeared on BBC Dragon's Den successfully. I crowdsourced $250K within 5 days. I mean, I know that we've had crowdsourcing be one of the discussions. And I'm really passionate now about more broadly helping innovators and investors. So I advise for Beast Ventures, who are one of my major backers. And I also help with a accelerator that helps women, female-focused businesses in Berlin. So I've seen both sides of the way that the sausage is made, as it were. So I want to share some of those learnings. So a quick show of hands. Is anyone in here fundraising at present? Anyone? Yeah, a couple of fundraisers. Is anyone thinking about, fundraising can be thought more broadly. So, getting buy-in from a project internally, there's those sorts of things. Any show of hands for that? Any investors in the room? Yeah. So fundraising is something that I think we all have to do, and certainly if you start a business, you may find that that you're forced into doing it. And more importantly than that, we heard earlier that if you can, sales, cash is king. If you can manage to fund your business without having to go down this route, it's great. But with technology businesses and the like, sometimes it's just not possible. So the things that I've learned, I've got a couple of tips. So seeking safe networks is really important. You'll find that there are loads of fake investors, which is a particularly nasty version of fake news. When you go out, when I started. So these are people who aren't really investors and actually trying to sell you something. So they're trying to take your money rather than giving you any. There are some areas where you are asked to pay an awful lot of money. When I started out, obviously I came from the bar. It's a technology business. I had to create a new network, and it was very daunting. I didn't know personally any technology investors, or at least I thought I didn't, but actually it turned out that I did. So the things that you want to look for are professional organizations, experienced investors, and industry experts. And one thing that I found to be incredibly helpful were networks. So Janet was on the stage before. I met her, I found her an intern. And then we went to San Francisco, and I met an amazing group of peer entrepreneurs, one of whom has a unicorn business. And they really have helped me along the journey. They would have had their stories. They can warn you about investors who aren't great and kind of throw you in the path of people who can really, really help. So using your network and like finding a tribe that can really help you is something that I found to be super helpful. In addition to that, finding the right lead, I think, is essential. So it's really, really hard keeping different investors engaged. So if you're raising a large round of maybe 500,000, you might have a lot of smaller tickets, 25K or 50K, and getting those people to buy in is one thing, and keeping them engaged is hard when it's you. So if you find the right lead, they'll be passionate about your space and your business. They'll put money into your business and time. They'll have the professional gravitas to drag in other investors within their network. So they can be really, really helpful. And certainly when I was starting out, I had gone through a process. I'd raised quite a lot of a round, and I was engaging with somebody whose terms I wasn't sure of, and I felt really stuck. And I met Amir Alon, who then became my chairman. Amir was the chairman of a FTSE 100 recruitment business. He's an investor in many tech companies which are really disruptive. He's an incredible entrepreneur in his own right. And I was looking for somebody who had experience, and I just met him for a couple of coffees. And that turned into him leading my round and being the chairman for my company and helping us grow. So that was like an amazing experience that I had. And everybody knows that the wrong leader, you don't want the wrong guy, because it's no bueno. So, you need to find someone who has the credibility to help you grow your business, can give you those industry insights, and ultimately they're going to probably end up on your board. So once they're in, you might have to deal with this person for a really long time. So making sure that you've got the right fit is really important. And at Beast, as another example, Nick, their partner, I actually met at a wedding. So I was sitting down, and I didn't realize that I was pitching him my very early stage business. So he asked me what I was doing, and I explained it to him, and I didn't know that he's actually invested in a number of huge companies alongside Andreessen Horowitz and all these other people, and he ended up being an investor. So always being passionate about what you're doing and talking to people can really help. But making sure that the right people are with you are really important. I think that I've kind of learnt from my bar days, but I see it a lot now that I have the other hat on, advising for Beast Ventures, and also being a board advisor for some accelerators, being on the other side and helping people select, is that your deal is so much more than your deck, and the way that you conduct yourself throughout is the difference between winning the race and losing. So, process is really important, and it's something that I think investors and stakeholders buy. So if you have a really good, strong process from start to finish, and they feel as though you're really in control, you have a very clear set of things to set through, and you've thought it all the way through, that is part of the trust that you build, so that they know that when they give you their cash, you're not going to be nuts. So, the things that you need: deck, 2-pager, draft terms, and then the detailed due diligence. All your team CVs, key proofs, customer references. I created an online data room, which had a firewall, so it's secure. People couldn't download the things, but everything was there, so people felt a level of trust, because when you're asking people for a lot of money and they haven't known you necessarily for a really long time, that becomes really important. Then there's the question of honesty. So, often you hear these PR stories about some guy who probably it's usually a guy who kind of comes out of nowhere and says that they've raised like 150 million like on like a napkin that they kind of like threw at some guy somewhere. But often in my experience and the experience of the men and women who I know founding businesses, it's not that easy. If you're not in one of the trendy spaces, which is very hard to know ahead of time, you know, it's tough, and there can be that sort of pressure to try and make yourself into the buzzword. But to borrow Batman, you know, if you're Batman, be Batman. You know, certainly when people have been pitching to Beast, sometimes you get people who are obviously not, you know, what they say they are. They're like, you know, I'm crypto blockchain IA man, and you're like, no, we both know you're Batman. So just be Batman, be yourself, find the people who are going to support you in your journey and want you to be who you are. Another thing is that due diligence runs both ways. So I think it's really important to do as much due diligence on your investors as they do on you, because they're going to be asking your, you know, former colleagues, your customers, clients, all those sorts of things about them and about you, and so you need to do the same. I have two stories here. So early on to pitching, I met with this group who were attached to a really big PE fund, and I thought that they could do the whole round, and I was so excited. And they made me jump through 12 hoops of hell. So it was like several like hour-long meetings where they grilled me for ages, and at the end they're like, we're thinking, you know, we might do like 2K. I was like, each? And they're like, in total. I was like, oh, right. And so I learned a lesson just because you think you know about their background, because of what they do in their day job or just in general, being really clear and qualifying is really important. It's like any sales process that Rachel took us through earlier. So I created a checklist, and on that checklist, I asked them what companies they've invested in the past, how much their ticket sizes have been. Sometimes I contact the founders if they're going to be active in the business and ask if they've been helpful. It allowed me to catch a couple of competitors who wanted to meet me to kind of get all my information, find out what I was doing. And so when you ask the right questions, you discover actually they've already made a significant investment in your kind of Lex Luthor type of company. As I'd said before, I went on to Dragon's Den, which is an amazingly difficult show to be on, but also amazing opportunity. I got the ability, and I remember when I was at university, I used to watch Dragon's Den all the time, and I remember thinking that only a lunatic would ever go on that show. I used to laugh about it. So as I was about to walk down the stairs, I was like, I cannot believe me of however many years previous would be absolutely floored. If I had bet myself like £1 billion, I would have said I wouldn't be walking down those stairs. But I went. And it was an amazing opportunity. So many people watched it. I got so many emails, heartfelt emails from people who heard about what I was attempting to do and were really spurring me on. I got an offer of investment from Peter Jones, which is an amazing thing. Intern Avenue was the first recruitment business to ever get a deal in the 7 years on the show, and it was a real coup. But ultimately, your partners that you choose as investors are really important, and mutual fit is everything. And so afterwards, I really thought very carefully about the road that we wanted to go down as a business, and we ended up going and raising a large amount of money led by Amir Elon and Nick Ho, which was definitely the right decision, but it's an individual case. But the experience, I could do a whole talk about it, and anyone who wants to talk to me about what it's like to go on that show, it's a very, very challenging thing. You're in there for 2 hours. I think people don't often know that, and then they condense it. So that's a long time to be kind of in the zone if you can be. Finally, timing is everything. So the right time to fundraise is hopefully never. If you get enough customers and you have enough revenue, that would be great. But some businesses like technology platforms require a lot of R&D, and it's just not a possibility. So when you're just about to run out of cash, it's not a good time. When you kind of want to raise for some reason, that's not a good time or reason. One of the things that I found to be really helpful is understanding the cadences and trying to go along with it. So as I mentioned, I also have done some crowd funding, and I managed to crowd fund all of the investment that we were looking for at that time in a really short period, less than 5 days. And how I did that is it was off the back of an announcement of a major partnership that we had with Vodafone Foundation, which was announced by Angela Merkel, who's amazing. We had a lot of things going on. We also had some innovation and R&D grants, which are very competitive. So timing your funding, to be part of a more cohesive story can really help you get through. But ultimately, it's a question of perseverance. So anyone who has gone out there, with their cap in hand, door to door, asking people that they don't know for large amounts of money, will know that it is and can be a slightly soul-destroying and lonely kind of business. You'll have lots of false starts and false dawns. You'll be trying to run your business at the same time as running a very, very detailed and important enterprise project. Often the growth or survival of your business will depend on whether you're able to find the right partners and they'll be able to believe in you. Because ultimately, startups are really risky. The failure rate is so high. And when you go out to fundraise, you've got to understand that maybe 80% of the people that you're going to meet are going to slam the door in your face. Or worse than having the door slammed in your face, maybe they'll just say, oh, this is nice, maybe come and meet me in 4 weeks. And you don't know whether they mean that as, usually it's like a gentle no. But it's very difficult to get objective feedback when you're going through this process. So usually, if you can, you build your relationships really early, so there's trust already. But the one thing that I will say is just kind of, embrace the process and keep going. It's hard, but it makes you tough. So I wanted to leave some time for questions. So if anybody's got any questions, they can certainly ask me. And anyone who is thinking about fundraising, I do advise for Beast. They're an amazing fund. They invested in us. I think a mark of investors is not just how they are when things are going well, but how they support you when things are difficult. And they always are in your journey. So anyone who wants to email me about Beast, they invest in early stage, seed plus companies, AI, deep tech, quite a few of the buzzwords that I said before, but they do a range of technology investments at ticket sizes of 100 to 250K, 2 exits, and they co-invest with some amazing people. So without further ado, anybody got any questions?
Great, I'm going to run around for you. I'm going to go to someone I couldn't get to earlier. Before we even have questions, can we have a round of applause for Dupsy, please? Looking around, and as ever, feel free to say who you are, where you're from, and you don't have to.
Hello, great talk today. I run a recruitment business, and I'm just intrigued to know, what does the business look like now you've got all the investment?
Yeah, so I actually, we launched our platform in October of 2012. And at that point, we were a teeny tiny team, like me and 2 developers, like kind of in a shed in our underpants. And then we grew the team quite a lot. And there are some announcements that I'd like to make, but I can't make quite yet about what the next stage of the business is. But we grew a ton. We partnered with Vodafone Foundation to help us expand. There's like a lot of articles and stuff about us. But yeah, we've had a really great journey, and we're about to announce another exciting thing that I can't say yet.
Very good, thank you, Dipsy. Question here, and I'm looking out for others.
Dupsy, thank you. Rob Salisbury's from Buthnott Latham Private Bank. I'm interested how you've separated your personal finances from your company's finances. Where's the line?
So, by structure, we're a limited company. So the business is separate from me personally. I think when you start a company, it feels a lot like you are your company. But I think the earlier you can, it becomes its own thing, the better. Very early on, we had professional advisors, accountants, all those sorts of great things. And through networks that I had and began developing, a load of really, really helpful people pointed me in the direction of people who could help me kind of decide on what's the best way to approach that whole thing. So that's how I did it.
Dupsy, you'd had a successful career. Do investors expect you to be putting some of your own money in? Or is there a way around that? Any lesson you learned?
I think it really depends. I think certainly one large part of the investment that you give is your sweat. Yeah. So in my particular case, I had a very lucrative city law career that I kind of jettisoned to eat ramen noodles and sit in tracksuit bottoms, trying.
The tracksuits come on now, has it? Also?
Yeah. So Now I'm in tracksuit bottom phase. So one of the things that you have to appreciate is that as a founder in the early stages of your business, especially when you're pre-revenue, you're earning very little, so you pay yourself just enough to keep a roof over your head, and I think that's seen as part of the deal. I didn't pay myself very well at all.
Good. So I think we've got one more question. I've seen another one, but I spotted one here. Yeah.
So throughout your journey, up until where you are now, whenever you failed or hit a wall, what did you tell yourself to help yourself keep going?
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Now, Dupsy, forgive me, hold that thought, because we'll get the final question in, and you can tackle them in whichever order you like.
Hello, my name is Bracken Jelly. I own a few different businesses, and I'm in the process of setting up a new one. My question is almost identical. I'm passionate about women leaders and women leading business, and I'm really interested to know that at times when you might have found you've kind of suffered from self-doubt, how do you make yourself feel bold? What do you do to kind of bolster yourself to progress?
Yeah. So the failure question, I think, is a really important personal one. I have failed so many times, I cannot tell you. And some of them I have felt in a really heartbreaking sense, because any person who's trying to do something that's this difficult and is super ambitious, even when you're making progress, you're always fighting against yourself. So there's this thing called, there's this phrase that I use, which is fortune favors the bold. And actually, before I contacted Amir Aylon, who ended up being my chairman, I was really worried about where my deal was going, and I was so stressed. I actually sat underneath my desk like this, which is a weird thing to do. I don't recommend it. And I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm so stressed out. And then fortune favored the bold popped into my mind. I had done some research. I knew that Amir existed, but I didn't know anyone who knew him. But because I'm a bit of a wizard about doing stuff, I managed to find his mobile telephone number and his email address through the wizardry of the internet and all sorts of things. So I began drafting an email, and I thought, fortune favors the bold, just phone him. So I picked up the phone and I said, hi, I'm Dupsy Abiola, and I've got this business, and I gave him my 30-second pitch, and he was like, how did you get my telephone number? I was like, never mind that, but will you meet me for coffee? And I had just been at a really low moment at that point. When you're just like, oh, come on, give me a break. He said, well, my son works in VC, so he's going to check you out, and if he thinks that you're worth meeting, I'll meet you, and if not, I won't. And, long story short, he met me. And every moment, the darkest moment before something great happens, there's this instant where you're like, oh gosh, how am I going to get through this? And it's just about courage. Just about courage, that's it. And I've had some great mentors and examples. My father was an entrepreneur too. I have lots of family members who've done impossible things. My cousin is an Olympian, one of the, I think the fastest Briton in history. And he only started running when he was at university. And I was really fortunate that my family are all about, you know, the world will always tell you how impossible anything is, you know? But if you just choose not to believe it and give it a shot, what have you got to lose? Because I was like, I could have not called, but I did. And, you know, failure is the beginning of a better plan, like a new way. So, you know, there's not a single person in this life who did something extraordinary, who didn't have loads of setbacks and things that didn't work out. Yeah, that's my answer.
What an extraordinary way to end our morning. Dubsy Abiola, thank you. Thank you, Dubsy. Wow, I love it. Also, clunk. That's my favourite line of the day. Never mind that. What a great way to get through it. Thank you very much, Dubsy. Should we have one more round of applause for Dubsy? I thought that was a wonderful session. Thank you. Ladies and gents, we approach the end of our morning session, and I want to tell you something about what's going to happen now. And I'd prefer to tell you it with you being upstanding, if that's all right, just because otherwise I know what you're like. You know, sort of, you know, I'll just be sitting there thinking, yeah, whatever, Ollie. Okay. The following is going to happen, please. I'm going to work my way back because we are all going to be reunited in here at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock seems ages away, doesn't it? And Jason Miller, who is the global content marketing lead at LinkedIn, is going to be back on this stage. So that's 3 o'clock. Okay, we're going to go from here to our lunches. Like Minds, as you know, sort of divides and conquers over lunch. If you haven't yet signed up for a lunch, they're not lunch lessons, they're just nice, intimate lunches. But if you haven't done that, that's all right. There are still some pieces of paper just at the back. And if, like I would do, you've forgotten where you're having lunch, Rebecca, can you give us a wave? Can we have a round of applause for Rebecca, please? Because she is the linchpin behind the scenes today. And so we'll go and see you, Rebecca, if we've forgotten where we're having lunch. No great formality to lunches. All I'd encourage you to do is meet each other. There won't be any keynotes or talks or anything like that. So some will be small, some larger. But please make your way from here to lunch. And lunch, technically, then, is scheduled from 12:30 to 1:30. And then we go into our immersive workshops. And I'd just like the following to just give us a quick wave, just to help us put faces to names. If they've scurried to lunch, I will forgive them. Here we go. Julie Hawker, we've already met from Cosmic, and Kate Dudson will be giving us a session on how to enable digital transformation. Give us a wave. Are you here, ladies? Yes, there's Julie and Kate as well, co-chief execs. That's going to be at Exeter City Futures. Meanwhile, adventurer and strategy man, Derry Llewellyn-Davis, will be giving us business strategy on a page. I can see him. Give us a wave, Derry. There he is in the house, back from Bristol. And that's going to be at St. Olave's, which sounds like a church. Is it a church? No, it's a hotel. Very nice indeed. Okay, there's St. Olave's. How to become a thought leader. Chance would be a fine thing for me. That's good. Dan Simmons. Yes. Dan, are you from Astley Media, Dan? Have I got that very bad? No, you're not, are you? That's another Dan. But you were in Bristol, weren't you? Yes. It's very nice to see you back. Thank you very much, Dan. You're also going to be at St. Olave's. Thank you very much. That's Dan Simmons at the back. Stephen Bateman, very good company. Met him last night. How to create and build your marketing funnel. Where are you, Stephen Bateman? Are you in the house? Upstairs, yes, yeah, give him a wave, that's right, on the balcony, there he is. He is going to be at Dean Clark House. Two more, Chris Moss, do they know it's Chris Moss? At Exeter City Futures. Ooh, feed the world, feed us, Ollie, get off. How to encourage creativity. There you go, don't worry, he's only done the $3 billion brand, so, you know, mixed. And finally, Aji Isaac on how to build your digital strategy at Exeter City Futures. Where are you, Aji? Yes, very good. Thank you very much. Where was Chris, by the way? Chris, give us a wave, because we'll talk to you on the way to lunch. Yes, give us a wave. Thank you very much. Can we have a round of applause for all of those workshop deliverers for what they are about to deliver? From 1:45 to 2:45, you will not have, ladies and gents, a team leader to usher you speedily to your workshop. So please, independently, make your way there. I'll see you back in here at 3 o'clock. Lunch awaits. Thank you very much. Like Minds, that was a fab morning. Thank you. Ladies and gents, a couple of the workshops are at Exeter City Futures, which I understand doesn't come up on Google Maps. It's actually opposite Chandos, which I think is a bar sort of restaurant, just off Southern Hay. So that's where Exeter City Futures is. You've got some maps and some reminders on your workshops inside your lanyard. It's all tucked in there. So have a peer inside there, and they're quite well mapped out, I think. That's Exeter City Futures.
You can't walk around